soapbox for that.
Oh, sure.
One comment, I guess, back to the budget. It seems like some of the things in here are normal operating maintenance stuff, like low dollar things that are not capital projects, and that confused me a little bit.
So what page are you looking at?
Yeah. I wrote it in the comments, but like,
Should be the bottom right-hand corner. Page of,
yeah, hold on, I'm just looking through here. One thing that pops in my head, retread or ramp on Fort Dock 3, something like that, or forklift debt service. The things that are, and a lot of the NOAA things, I wouldn't classify those as capital projects, so it kind of diluted some of my processing as I was going through it.
the port has defined a capital project is anything with a life of greater than 5 years and greater value than $5,000. So some of the projects do look like repairs,
Gotcha.
but they are
That's
capital projects.
5 years or $5,000.
And then you got to remember that moratorium too is it's quite low. So we're gonna come back to you with some of those projects, so you know then what those are as well.
And some of these are here because we want complete transparency on what we do.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for clarification. I think I need
That's
that
the issue
definition.
comes up every year because I think some people, they think capital assets is a certain thing traditionally, but the accounting rules kind of set the stage for all that and how we have to account for it.
Right, okay, thank you.
And while it goes in the future, budget meetings, I'm going to put that note
Yeah.
in there.
And it's hard because you want to prioritize the top 5, and all those little ones are really important, and you have to do those. So it's hard not to prioritize those, but when you're prioritizing something that's $5,000 versus something that's, $1 million, it's hard to gauge. That's where I had a little confusion.
Because
Thank
those
you.
got to be appreciated too. So one of the things that Mark and I have been talking about is, and it's something we haven't really done very well in the past, as we are, especially as we replace any capital improvement, that we create a good form of depreciation, that the same amount we're depreciating we're putting aside for future replacement, because that's how we should do it. We shouldn't be struggling. I know it's hard to find the money, but if we do it slowly, I think we have a better chance of replacing something than if you all of a sudden 5-10 years come about and you need to replace a crane or a forklift or a dock or whatever that is, and then you go like, oh, now we don't have the money, how are we going to get that money? And some of those things are hard to go after grant funds because it's not like you're creating new jobs, creating new economic opportunities. It's just replacing, something that is in existence. So for that reason, we really need to be better about, as we depreciate those items, we account for putting money aside again for when the replacement time comes.
Totally agree.
So
It
that
kind of
is
is,
something we're doing.
it goes along the line of increased planning everywhere, and that's a part of it.
Then efficiencies can be identified.
So I know we're kind of jumping around on this, but I was just going to go on the rates and fees for a second. I know a lot of our projects are.
Right. Where are we good?
I'm just going to start address some rates and fees. Some of the projects that we have are predicated on some fee increases. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do those increases, but I think we should reach out to some of our customers, the commercial fishermen. I know they want the docks improved, but if they're going to be taking a big hit this year, we need to make sure that we need to check and make sure they're still willing to get these big increases on their fees. Because they need to look into the future too, and we need to respect their individuality and make sure that they may want these things and they're willing to pay for them, but at this time, we need to make sure that they're on board still, looking into the future, because they go year to year, and they can't project 5 years out what their income is going to be. And I would really hate to increase the fees to pay for these improvements and then have it put some of these homes out of business. And same with the leases too. You know, the Rogue and some of our other places, they're very much based on, you know, expendable income. And, you know, we can't project, you know, how people are gonna, their fear or their concerns, but, you know, some of our tenants might be having some issues, you know, like Jim said, they had to lay off 75% of the people. And what's going on with our tenants and our leases to make sure that they're gonna be able to pay their bills and supplies.
And I think it's a good point. I'm gonna let Aaron address more as you know he's told me, but I guess first-hand knowledge. I think being flexible and having when we see they're behind payment, be able to work with them is important. I think there's certain ones that we already have established patterns that it will be more difficult to work with them because they've been past you for quite a while. I think it's a good point, but we'll need to individualize the approach.
I think you're right about that. And right as of this moment, I think it's a bit early to try and make some kind of determination on it. Generally speaking, I think what you'll see is in the short term, it's going to hit businesses that are not as liquid, and certainly if you're not, I mean, in the fishing business, I guess it depends on how many assets you have where you're going to be long term. But I mean, if you're not very liquid right now, it's going to really hit people hard. And then you know, we may hear the commercial fishing user group has a lot of representation from some, you know, a very degree, the best thing we can get as far as the mixture of businesses from smaller, you know, smaller businesses to some of the larger ones, and that's probably the best asset we have. The longer the downturn runs, then, you know, the more we will see, but you know, certainly we will talk to them. See how I mean, I can tell you a few anecdotes of what I've heard so far. I don't know how much meaning it carries, so because the situation changes day to day with the week, so.
Well, I was just gonna, the fishermen usually are pretty vocal when they're like, hey, we need to get together and talk about this. And I haven't heard that because it's early as to what, I think shrimp season and when it opens is gonna be a telling tale.
Yeah, so this was, just by way of background, there was a formal or informal agreement with the fishing industry in terms of these fee increases.
I think that's an important point to bring up. So the way that it worked was, so over last year I did no fewer than 4 staff reports to the commission on this discussion that we had. It ran, so the budget cycle was real similar last year to what it was this year. The way everything came up was the first time I floated out this idea of doing some rate increases so we can get electrical outlets or electrical pedestals done was at this meeting, I think. That's the first time I presented it to the commission. We got a consensus. There was never any vote or anything like that. But it was a consensus. Okay, well, let's go talk to the fishermen user group about this. We did a couple meetings with the user group, and then came back to Port Commission, reported how it went, and kept everybody sort of on the same playing field. The idea didn't really change much from the time that I first brought it up until the budget message. And in the budget message, there is a section from last year on page 8 that says, you know, this was in the budget message, which was approved. This was part of the budget. At the commercial marina, rate increases of 10% for semi-annual and annual mortgage licenses are proposed to generate funding over 3 years of consecutive increases to help pay for electrical upgrades in Port Dock 5 and 7. The port will also be contributing funds to that project and has assigned unappropriated funds in the facilities maintenance reserve fund of $150,000 and is budgeting $65,000 next fiscal year, and the same fund to increase the fund balance to support this project. So there wasn't like a motion and a vote to say this is what we're doing, but it was the general consensus of the users in the port and at the commission level that this is the path we're taking. And I get asked about it fairly regularly, you know, hey, you know, I mean, our increased revenue the year that we've been having is due to generally about 4 categories of changes that we made last year. One of them being rate increases, which was the most significant anecdotally that anybody could recall in 1 year. So we really increased mortgage rates last year to start setting us down this path. The reason for choosing this path was it was a mixture of factors. One of them being the replacement of the Port Dock 5 pier gives us the opportunity to get the conduit and the lines run out there. Secondly, the state of the actual pedestals themselves, they're all obsolete, and we have regular problems with them. And I can probably show you a few pictures of how bad they are. We did have some instances of a couple of divers encountering some straight current in water, which is a serious life-threatening type of issue due to bad pedestals. And then the other issue is that they are completely, I already said they're obsolete. It's the material condition of them. They're 30 amp pedestals in a commercial environment that's not really adequate. It should be 50 amp. When we got the engineering done on the Port Dock 5 project, part of that project is changing out the box that feeds the docks, and we couldn't get an engineer stamp on that segment of it unless we promised to shut down three pedestals. So we're losing pedestals to stay within code to make sure we're not overloading that equipment. But I can tell you, I think we're still up there because we get regular tripping breakers, which is an indicator that you're overloading things.
Yeah, so, we're getting into the weeds a little bit, but it's useful for me to understand, because it gets at Walter's comment, right, that how flexible are we to adjust if indeed these dollars from fees are being directed to actual improvements that are already budgeted for and are being expensed out? Are we going to, you would stop the improvement because you were going to decrease the amount of mortgage fees, for example? So that's why I was wondering how formal or informal those agreements are going forward. How much flexibility does the port have? And if they're critical infrastructure and there's an agreement to pay for them through use of mortgage fees as other kinds of potential revenue sources. All right.
Well, I think that, before we implement some of these fees and the budget, we still got a bit of time here, and we will be looking very seriously on what happened between now and then with the market in general for a lot of our customers, from tenants to fishermen in general. So we'll try our best to evaluate that, and if we need to, we may have to reconsider some of those fees for some areas that are being affected, and therefore we may have to reconsider some of the improvements. And it may not be, we're still going to have to do those real required improvements, some of the things, independent if we promise them or not, if they need to be done, and it's an issue, we're just going to have to get them done. However, there are other areas that we may look into and balance out the fact that perhaps we may not have some increases that we're expecting because of what's happening, because this is something that is unexpected, for everybody. So we have to take that into consideration. As we worked out these numbers, those fees increases and everything, we're not there. We didn't have this problem. So we're not taking those things into consideration. But now we still got a couple months to see what that's going to do to our customers. And if it's something that we should continue, we should pull back. But what that does is, to get where we need to be is people would also have to understand that we may pull back a bit this year, which may create a bit of larger increases in the future. Because that's the difficulty sometimes when you don't increase when you should to stay up at par with the market. Then when you try to get back and stay with the market, people go, wow, now you increase it too much. So those are things we're going to have to play with a little bit moving forward. So.
Yeah. To Walter's original point, communication with customers, relationships with customers, not just fishermen, but everybody else. That's great. Kind of same thing you were saying. Mark and Paula, y'all weren't here for when we were discussing the development of plan for increasing the fees, but showing the fishing, and here's where it's going to go. But that was in my short time with the port, that's just one of the real neat things I saw and I thought was very, very well planned out and executed. And I would recommend following up every year, because us human beings can have short memories, and like, yes, they agreed to it once, but maybe come back, okay, here's our original agreement, here's the money we've collected towards it, and here's what we're looking at this year. And I would recommend another. I didn't go to that meeting, but I listened to it after the fact and heard feedback that was very, very positive. So I would recommend continuing what we started.
Yeah, a lot of times reminding them now and regularly is good, and then right as these fees change, because some people don't realize until it's their bill. But something that's important, I think, also to put it all into context, is one of the reasons why we looked at this particular. Our rates and fees hit the businesses in different ways. So when we're talking about mortgage, and this is a NOAA report that actually our financial or our strategic business plan folks put me onto, but this is published every several years. It's called Economic Data Collection Program. It's a report on catcher vessels on the West Coast. And this backs up the notion that mortgage, as a percentage of, or when you look at expenses for a fishing business, mortgage is by far the lowest. It is a small segment. We don't want to change that. We don't want to take mortgage out of the realm of being a small fee to them, but we want to be able. I mean, that's why we looked at this rate, was because it was like, what do we have that everybody pays, that we can increase a little bit so it doesn't hit everybody really hard individually, but we can collect a measurable sum that we can do some improvements with. And so when you increase mortgage rates, we will get some complaints, obviously, but we've got to remember exactly what we're talking about here. It's not like, it's different than increasing service rates. Service rates, individually as a business, they pay more in quantity for. So it is a larger percentage of their cost, but mortgage is sort of the bread, if you will, in a grocery store. It's not the T-bone steak.
I mean, if they don't have service, and if they use service, then the business is doing well. I would imagine, you're not gonna, the more you bring in, the more you pay. So if you're not bringing in much, if you're not doing too well, then you're not gonna pay much. So, and that balances things out a little bit on that basis.
I agree, reaching out is an important asset, important part of what we do, having regular user group meetings. Will have to change how we will do those in light of restrictions on meeting size. But I do agree, maintaining a relationship is going to be really important. It always is.
I forget the quorum number. I think the quorum is 9.
6, I think. Is it
7?
9? Yeah, it's a large group, though. That's one of the first things I thought of. Is most of those meetings have easily 2 and 3 times as many people as we have in here. So.
And the public is usually robust.
Yeah, especially if it's something that draws a lot of interest. The first meeting that we had last year to talk about this stuff, we had a really packed room. So, but we can also achieve it. I talked to a handful of folks just yesterday down to the doctor about it. Asked them about this issue, and they're mainly concerned. But it's still very early. They're mainly concerned about we need new pedestals, so we need more power capacity on the docks. It's probably kind of easy to say that right now, depending on your current position in life. It's hard to say how that. But again, like I said, remembering that the mortgage bill is one of the lower bills that you have to pay. If we're talking about, as long as we keep it in that category, and we are, and we're delivering. It's my general impression is we're delivering improvements that people are willing to pay for that stuff. They understand that we are trying to get facilities in place that they desperately need. But we've got to return on it. That's the thing. It's that what they've seen for years, if you look at Port Lock 7, it didn't arrive in that condition overnight. But as you see rates go up over the years and you pay those bills and then you continue to see Port Lock 7 go the way it is, over time, I would be right. I would probably be the first person at the Port Commission meeting saying, no, I'm not paying higher rates anymore. You're not doing anything with my money, and we all know that that's not necessarily the case, but that's the perception of people. If we can change that perception, I think we'll get a lot more support on these type of things.
One of the things that we are doing, instead of just looking into raising fees, but to make them make sense, first of all. One of the things that we all realize here is that we have some real heavily discounted moorage, both on the recreational and commercial fishing sides. And as we look at those, it was very clear that they weren't paying for themselves. That we are literally paying for people to be there, because with the water and other things, electricity, whatever we provide, wasn't paying for, you know, those folks to be there. When you look at 75% discounted, I think the number to call it even was what, 60?
I have it, I think it's in the 60-foot range, so.
Yeah, 60-some%. If we discounted that, we would, or still wouldn't be making money. And now when you're looking at 75, we're definitely paying somebody to be there. So those are the things that we are changing in order to, you know, so we're not offering that for new customers anymore. And for the recreational, we're cutting that down to, you can pay 6 months but not a year, because a year you automatically create that.
So I don't understand what you mean by discounting. Is that a formal? You say we're only going to charge you this instead of this? Or is that a generic?
Page 44.
Annual versus semi-annual versus monthly, they all have different fee structure. So when you offer an annual pass, you're discounting at 75% of someone paying monthly.
See,
What,
then the
discount?
messaging.
Yes.
I see now.
And I think, so this is another one of those things that I would like to hear
That
more,
even makes sense. Yeah.
also from our customers on, because you always have to turn it around and say, how does this work for me? What motivates me to buy an annual moorage if my boat's gone for, I don't know, however many months to pay? You got everything from salmon boats that, you know, to, like, look at the terminal, a lot of the boats that moor out at the terminal, they're gone a lot. So some of them have annual morages, some of them don't. And then bear in mind also that our port users some of them carry annual morages in various different places. And then the other factor that we have to bear in mind with rates is that the problem that we're talking about with the low rates is that it's a chronic condition, at least of the Oregon coast, most of the Washington coast, and the Northern California coast as well. So when we compare to other ports, we may be one of the more expensive ones, but if we just go off of comparisons, we should expect that we're going to stay in this state. They've all got this problem, definitely.
So on the annual moorage, it takes us an 86-foot boat to break even. Or the north. Yeah, from the north side.
I sometimes wonder about the messaging on, you know, hey, I got a new boat, I need annual moorage. Oh, we don't have any. Well, shouldn't they be told we have semi-annual? Or we don't have any semi-annual either?
We know we do that, but they don't want to pay that higher rate. So we've got a handful.
So they could say, I'm on annual moorage. And then
Right.
they're told we don't have any. And
We're not
then-
able.
And then the fight's on.
Right, and you know, depending on your point of view, some believe that because I've been here for the longest out of everyone, then I should therefore have the right to add more boats or whatever the case. Maybe that's a factor. Maybe it's
Even
not.
though those boats aren't even here for 5 months out of the year.
We're talking about when you're selling an annual. Because here's the other side of it. If we don't have room for you and you're an annual moorage holder, you're going to be even more mad.
And that, I was going to point that out, because we had situations like that.
Right.
If I have an annual moorage, I can't even.
And I
afford
can't
this.
more, you know. So,
Right.
so if we continue to grant more annual morages, we're going to increase the level of anger in our annual moorage holders.
Because it comes out in the wash on in the coffee shops, like, No, they won't let me park right in my own port. You know, 'cause they denied me an annual mortgage. When they're allowed to park under a semi-annual.
Yeah.
Dock,
And they
rather,
can
dock.
renew, and they can renew those. The problem is not having a semi-annual anyway, is the discount that comes with the annual.
I think the question that we're looking at is, do we want to regulate and tell people, no, you can't, because the other alternative is to say, you cannot come here at all. Or to
That's
allow,
what they hear.
well, but they still come in. And this is the point that they argue because they like to bring this up. It's like, well, I'm still more here, I'm more right there. I'm just paying more for it. The idea is that the dollar creates self-regulating behavior at some point in time. And rather than setting a rule that says you may not be here, we simply have a rule that says if you choose to be here, you're going to be charged more. In order to in fact, motivate people maybe not to come in and more if they don't have to.
And with the commercial fishermen user group, that was made clear that you didn't want to send them out of town because of high mortgage, that we were keeping it livable.
We're doing the best we can, but the fact is we just don't have the space, and that's this is it highlights the critical problem that we have. And I would say, you know, you can look ahead, look at the financial uncertainty situation, and bear in mind that there are people out there that are going to figure out ways to come out of it in a better position, and there are those that are going to be successful. Like we just remember the SDAO conference we had to talk about that box company that came out of the last downturn. It's a well-studied, I can't remember the name of the company, but it's a well-studied example of how to come out of a financial downturn in a better spot. And the savvy business people can do that. I wager to say that the fishing businesses that we have in Newport, when you compare it to the rest of the ones on the Washington, Oregon coast, we have some of the most savvy business people in the fishing industry here.
I guess you could call it savvy.
So as the fishing industry restructures and the less successful businesses, maybe they fold.
Right.
Where do those permits go? Where do those boats go? Do they stay in Garibaldi? Do they go to Florence? Do they go to Reedsport? I don't think so. I think they come here. I don't even think they go to Charleston before they come here. I think they come here. They're not going to go to Grace Harbor. Is a good comparison. I mean, they land a lot of hake up there, and there's processing capacity there. But I still think that this is a better opportunity for most of them. So the question is, are we going to seriously see a reduction in commercial? I really don't know. It's too early to tell. Or do you see Newport competing better in a financial downturn than other ports along the West Coast? I don't know.
The statistics back you up. Newport is gaining. There are some other communities that are slipping. And as far as what's going to happen this year with the way with coronavirus and everything else, we will know for sure probably by May 15th, because then, well, we should know, shrimp, things have changed. Last week, plant manager told me that they took in a third less rockfish than they had planned to the week before, and it's still too much. The restaurants have closed. The salesmen have to readjust. I've heard some rumblings with shrimp, but we won't know here. I'm real curious to see how shrimp starts out. So once we know how shrimp starts out, hopefully in April, hopefully it doesn't go till May. And once we find out if a lot of workers travel here from other countries for hake, and shrimp, if the fish plants are able to fully staff up and run, and shrimp gets going and the salesmen readjust with roundfish, we could be humming right along. We'll find out here real soon.
We're still planning on having capacity for squid this spring too. We just talked to some of our most reliable folks yesterday, and they said, come hell or high water, they're going to be here by April 15th and buy it. So, because they can freeze. They can take all that and freeze it, and they're not too worried about getting out to market right now. They'll have it in inventory for when things change. There's a number of boats that are looking to capitalize on that. But here again, what does the marina look like when we add 15 boats to it? Because they come in, we don't want to turn them away, because that is revenue that's realized on top of the services we deliver. But whenever I look at these things, I look for it, projects included, staffing and everything else. I look for flexibility. I want to have the ability to respond and keep the cost as low as we can possibly keep it when we're waiting. Because if we're not too careful, we can plan for increase or decreased revenue. We can plan for decreased revenue, but if we're not too careful, we will plan to decrease revenue. And I don't want to do that. I want to have the opportunity, and it shows up for us to be. So flexibility is what I ask for usually when we're planning to try and capitalize on opportunities.
So to me, what it comes down to is you got to look at what you have and where you are in comparison to market. We're 110 or more percent in capacity. Okay, so it's not like we're starting for customers at this point. Things could change, again, everything is going on, but and then we look at our fees, and we are not receiving proper fees to even pay for itself in some cases. For that reason, our analysis showed that, okay, we can certainly afford to go this route, that we took of not offering. And if things change, and we feel like, people walking away because of it, and we are now at a point that we need to reconsider this discount, we'll talk about it. But at this point in time, you got to analyze what you have. We are overcrowded. That's what it comes down to. And we are not receiving proper payments for what we have out there.
AMI is the Association of Realtors, but they put a good benchmark, and I've learned this from parking committee work too. 85% is where you'd rather it be. So if you're 85%, you're functionally full, you still have that extra 15% to account for transient folks coming through. It allows for rollover and everything else. That's where we would prefer to be, would be at 85%. We're way over that.
Yeah, so this is a great discussion, and it reminds me of one of the things that is useful for me is to have this understanding of where we're going in terms of, for example, competition and development of the ports. What does that look like over the next decade? What is the, as Aaron, you stressed, the change in consolidation, fishing, and processing industry? What does that look like over the next 10 years? In order to make some of these decisions, right? As a commission, if we aren't well grounded in terms of our expectations and what is happening to our competition or the other ports, it's harder to make these decisions, including on the issue of discounting, right? So, and if we're already at overcapacity, you get into complex issues about how. But your argument, just go back, Paula. So anyway, one of my priorities was to do some of this strategic long-term thinking, and maybe do a workshop once a year on one of these key issues. That would ultimately help us build into the next plan, so that, for example, on this issue of what's happening long-term with the commercial fishing and processing industry long-term, and relative to other ports. I think that would be a great discussion to help set the stage for future planning and decision making. But I'm still confused, Paul, about the discounting. So what is your argument that our annual pricing is too low relative to other ports or relative to our daily price?
Relative to our own expenses that we have with maintaining the marina. And it's something that Mark put together, analyzing our cost. So we try to analyze our cost, and because it's not like we earn 100% of what they pay us. So if they pay us $100, there's usually, $30 that goes towards maintenance, it goes towards staff time and all this. So if you start looking at those type of things, you say, okay, how much of this $100 this person paid me is actually going to go to our bottom line, to our revenues, because that's gross. That $100 is a gross amount, but we have all these expenses. So what I'm saying is, by discounting 75%, we're only getting $25 out of that 100. And then that $25, it's not paying for our $30 expense, for instance.
Okay, so that's great. So now this is this cost center kind of thinking. We're looking at actual revenues relative to costs in our cost centers. where I get a little confused is what are the long-term infrastructure fixed costs and how those are paid for
And we're not
versus
even talking about-
operational. These are operational. We're just strictly calling operational costs, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Are we or are we not?
Yeah, yes, this is where you gotta watch it because something we get confused on capital maintenance projects and how we account for it
Yeah.
and how we think of it in business terms. But yeah, you're right.
And
Yeah.
we're not even talking about setting aside some of those costs that you will have in the future. And we are going to start doing that, you know, because again, as we depreciate things, we're going to start putting monies aside for future repair replacement. And as we do that, I guarantee you we're going to be way below that 60% bottom, required payment, to call it even. So those are things we're just gonna, we're not gonna fix the problem today, because this is something that's been ongoing for too long. But as we manage to bring things apart, then we need to continue doing the right thing to get it right.
So just one last comment, it goes back to what Aaron said. I mean, the fishing industry here, these are big business, some of the good moderate sized businesses. They're smart guys, they understand what we're talking about. And they know that these investments into the docks and services are critical for their long-term success. And this gets back into communication. They understand this, and if you come up with good planning, they'll understand the need for those plans, as long as they make rational sense to them, and why, and that's why I think they've already agreed to some of this fee increase. But in terms of long-term thinking about these long-term investments, this communication with the fleet is really critical, so that they understand the long-term thinking, planning makes sense to them, they understand the needs. And if other ports don't do this, they won't be able to provide the services that this fleet needs. So that's the flip side of all this. We're actually investing in them, even though it may look in the short term like there's higher fees or expenses. In fact, we're providing the long-term base that they're going to need to be successful.
I tell you one thing, this is not just our problem. You all know that this is an ongoing, you talk to any port, especially here in Oregon and Washington. Washington, they tend to get a little bit more taxes. All the ports in Washington get way more taxes than Oregon does.
What do you mean, way more? They're paying more taxes? They get
No,
revenue back?
the public paid more tax towards the ports.
The tax rates are higher.
The tax rates are much higher, so they have a little bit more flexibility in using some of those funds towards some of their infrastructure and providing the public better infrastructure to their marinas and terminals and so on. Here in Oregon, we literally depend on rents, but we cannot fully 100% depend on rents because all rents and loans require matches. The problem here is if we don't collect the proper funds to put aside for matches, then that infrastructure just keep on degrading. And that is, it's literally the case for every port you talk to over here. The only port that I can see have no problems with any of that is Port of Morrow. But that is because they're in a prime location with everything you could wish for, and they were able to capitalize on that. But you talk to all other ports, they all have problems, especially the recreation ports and the commercial fishing ports. It's a big problem. But and if you also talk to some of the fishermen, you know that they want the infrastructure. So I think some of them are willing to pay a little bit more if they go to the other ports and they are not putting any efforts into that, and we are. Some may leave, but some may come because they all of a sudden like what we were doing here, and it's time will tell, as we go through this process. But certainly we need to figure out a way of improving what we offer to the public, and just stay status quo and letting things degrade or start tipping off pieces of our docks because we don't have monies to fix them. it's not ideal because we're losing assets that we won't be able to offer again, especially considering permits nowadays are getting more and more complicated. If we had to remove parts of our docks and having to rebuild later, it's going to be just the environmental side of doing that is going to be a nightmare. So we have to conserve what we have and try to repair things when they need to repair and replace them when they need to replace. The problem that happens to most farm imports is that we wait so long to repair something where to get to a point where it's not repairable anymore. And we don't want to be there, and we've been there in some cases, and we don't want to continue being there. And that's what we're looking at.
I think, also we have the same discount issue over in South Beach is as far as where I don't know where the break-even mark is footage-wise on that, but the mortgage rates, I think we have to set them differently. There's a different customer base. It's all driven by different motives and different things. So one of the problems that we've got in South Beach is that, like Paula mentioned, recreational courts have a hard time. It's easy to say, well, we can get some Oregon State Marine Board money. However, when we do that, the Oregon State Marine Board, for all intents and purposes, owns the boat ramp pretty much. So they control those rates as well. We don't have as many people. The paradigm that the old, this place was built in '78, it was different back then as far as the way recreational boating worked. In 1978, a '78 Caprice Classic has much reduced towing capacity on the road than a 2019 Dodge one-ton dually. It's a lot more common now with bigger boats, trailering farther distances. Back then, it was more like 16, 18 footers, that were getting pulled shorter distances, and they would, that's why we had a dry moorage facility here, because you could offer it all in one place. Pull your boat out of the water, leave it here if you've got a bigger boat. You don't have to trailer it because you don't really have the capacity to do that anyway. So I still, when it comes to annual moorage holders in the recreation marina, the liveaboards is the most prevalent annual moorage holder in the South Beach marina. Other than that, it's a lot of people that will bring it down for the summertime, depending on what fisheries they're engaged in. Maybe if they're mixing it up between salmon, halibut, groundfish, rockfish, whatever they're going after. It could be, they're going out doing some sea bass or ling cod. But the halibut really moves a lot of people out on the weekends that they do it. And the salmon fishery, obviously, however it's doing that year, just moves traffic back and forth. And so we have focused so much effort since I've been here on comparison and comparing what everybody else does. But again, I still question, what is somebody from Corvallis really going to trailer their boat down to Reedsport? Instead, they're not going to go out of Florence, because Florence Bar is always restricted, and that's not going to change any. It takes this 8-foot swell on an ebb, and it'll be breaking at the tips there at 14 foot, no problem. And they're going to close it down all day long. So there's a very small niche of people that go out of Florence. So the next one south is going to be Reedsport. The next one north is Depot Bay. A lot of people, it depends on your familiarity with that bar and whether or not you're going to go across it. I consider it to be one of the best ones, but a lot of people stay away from it just because they won't go out of it. So the major traffic that we have coming out of here recreationally, I haven't seen it change. I've seen it increase over the last 20 years. But it seems to me like more traffic is coming out of here than what there used to be in comparison to everywhere else. When I used to stand Tower Watch up here, it was a busy weekend if we had 100 boats out in 1998. Nowadays, it's more like 300, and when I compare that to the other places I've been along the coast, it's increased more here than it has changed in Grace Harbor or Depot Bay. Florence has stayed, like I said, it's that small niche of people.
So yeah, this is a great discussion, right? And again, I wouldn't mind a workshop on this in terms of long-term, what's happening to the recreational industry long-term, including recreational boats, because you argued all kinds of stuff, trucks and towing, and our comparative advantage relative to other ports, what the effects of Route 20. But so the bottom line of all that though is I get back to this issue of what we could charge, right? What is the unique opportunity and demand and cost comparative advantage of Newport relative to what we at least at a minimum have to charge to make sure we address those key operational costs. So those are almost two, they're related arguments, but they're actually somewhat different arguments, right?
Yes.
So this is great though. This is great background.
So yeah, the break-even point is 42 feet over here per annual, just so you have that information. Something to note in the rates and fees, just so you know, we have not charged for single vehicle parking over here. So if they launch their boat, they charge a $6 fee. But if someone comes down with friends in their own vehicle, they can park free. So we've implemented a minimum charge of $3, and we haven't talked about all of the shop.
No, but I actually asked you to do it because all the ports, but we have to vet this
Yeah.
through. But what we did is we looked at what other ports are doing, and you even look at state parks. You look at it. Everybody charges. I mean, I went scuba diving in one of the bays here in the coast, and I paid, I don't know if it was $5 for parking, just a really rugged parking lot. So everybody
Hello?
charges. Everybody charges for some parking. And
Hello, are you trying to get to the port meeting?
Anyway. You see, I'm so making one, we need to. So we're just discussing a possibility of implementing that because if you park here and you launch your boat, that's already covered. But it's for other people that just want to wander around, or the friend. You have somebody's going in a boat. There are 5 friends, all gonna go in the boat. Everybody, all 5 friends can park here for free.
Yeah. And the annual mortgage holders have not paid a fee as well. Well, we're already losing money on most of the annual mortgage holders to start with. And then they're parking here, and we have the liveaboards that park here free. And we pay to make a bay on the other side too. So we've suggested 2 rates there, so I'd invite you to make sure you look at that.
And I even implemented a parking rate for the Newport now. When they did their lease, they have only a couple spots for themselves, and then they are paying for how many spots we're giving them, 5 spots or something like that, but they're paying for those 5 spots for their customers because it's the normal way. Again, we are losing opportunities to implement some form of obtain some revenues that is pretty common out there that could help us maintain the marina, maintain the asphalt here, maintain other things that we sometimes don't include on a regular budget until it's time to replace it, right? Because we charge trucks for access fees now to help maintain the asphalt for the commercial side of things. But when it comes to recreational, who's helping us pay for all this pavement here?
And we have set aside, and you'll see it, I believe it on these balance sheets, a fund called infrastructure. It's just something internal. It's it's a committed, what we're calling a committed account. But these funds are committed to infrastructure improvements. That's my own commitment. So it's not a commission commitment. It's not a restricted fund. It's just a commitment that we're collecting these fees for axles for infrastructure. We're collecting these extra parking fees for infrastructure. That's pavement.
Just a quick side note here. Gil mentioned something about having a workshop for discuss some of this stuff and we just talk about it. I think it would be prudent maybe on future goal settings that we probably pick a whole longer list of topics that you would like to discuss throughout the year, or bring maybe an expertise in some areas, and do, because one thing we haven't done here at this point that I notice is workshops, work sessions to discuss different items that we don't discuss on regular sessions. So this was not a topic for this particular goal setting, maybe I'll put that on the future ones, but it would be nice if each one of you, if you have any topics that you would like to discuss, that you give me a list of whatever you would like to hear, and I'll coordinate with Sarah on scheduling maybe some work sessions, because it's pretty normal to have 2 meetings a month, if you don't want to have it maybe every other month, to come up with a topic that we can talk about it and a little bit more of that. So, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Well, I was just elaborating on Paul said, we did use a bunch of work sessions, but, this is the first time we've been fully staffed in 3 years.
Right.
And so I think we only need to
It's
take that
kind
into
of
consideration.
exciting.
Well, and then, things have gotten smoothed out quite a bit. Our questions everything gets addressed a little quicker now. And I think, Paul's done a great job. I think we need to compliment ourselves and Paula for a little bit of stability here, being fully staffed, and Mark, and only staff. And that's a big deal. We've been short-staffed for almost 3 years now. And so now that we're fully staffed, we can start addressing that stuff. And this is just, we were talking about grants, and Paul brought that up, that since my time on the commission, it used to be 10-20% matches on grants. But what's happened now is you need to come to the table with more money in your pocket. And some of these are 30 to 50% matches now. And just the fact that the application, the step to getting those grants has gotten a lot higher. And the increase in projects. I mean, mitigation was a big deal with a lot of our previous projects, but that's up in the air now, how mitigation is done. So not only looking at higher matches, but increased costs across our projects. And so that's something.
And I think that's a trend. At the university, the same thing. We're
Yep.
seeing a lot more demand for match than we used to.
Yeah.
Which is tough because everyone got used to the low match requirements and overhead. So this is all just part of the financial pressures that we're all facing, right, in the long term. So that's just the need. So what Walter's emphasizing is this need for more careful planning, more thoughtful, because if you don't put together really competitive, thoughtful plans, including match part, you're not going to get these grants, and we won't be able to pay for fundamental infrastructure. So, and I'm a big supporter of, in terms of priorities, that was one of my priorities, was to do this planning, hire the consultants we need, put together really smart, thoughtful plans, because you won't compete otherwise.
And I tell you what, even on the grants that they require a minimum match, say 20%, I'm very familiar with Connect Oregon, for instance. I've seen how they rate them, because we had folks that I work with that help rate them, and they put more weight in certain areas when they're rating them, and having a larger match always get extra points.
Sure.
So even though they may ask, usually Connect Oregon is 20%, but if you put in 30-40%, guess what? You get extra pluses, and the chances of you getting that is way higher. So there is that too. Yeah.
And just to go back to the parking fees down here in South Beach, we did just have a South Beach user group, and basically what it was is we reached out to some of the mortgage holders, and then the boards. I have no issue with talking about charging for parking. It's a big deal, and we're in South Beach, but we need to get in front of that one. If we just all of a sudden start charging us or putting out tickets like we did
Yeah. No,
last
we
year,
need to talk.
we're gonna have a real big.
That's what I was going to mention that too, because the South Beach group is it's actually harder to really conduct any sort of messaging and communication with, because of the vast quantity of it that come from elsewhere. We've got a lot of people that use it locally, but there's a whole segment that comes recreational. So the idea of charging a $3 fee can really just infuriate people.
Oh, yeah.
More so than it actually may cause them to vote with their feet. But it would be nice if we can do something to get out in front of it, because eventually it'll come to the port commission somehow or another, I'm sure.
And the concept too is if we were to incorporate something like that, there would be a time frame where it will be just warnings and things like that, until
Right.
people get used to the concept. Because people have no problem paying $3-5 for whatever, but when it comes to that kind of stuff, you're like, you know what? It's because they're just not used to it. You know?
And if we're going to charge for it, we need to make sure we have spots for them to park. I mean, someone's going to say, I'm not going to pay $3 to park in the gravel out here.
I know.
And so, I mean, there's an expectation with that fee.
Right. Absolutely.
There was one thing that wasn't on the capital improvement review, the business plan last year, is a little bit of talk about working with the chamber, obviously, and road, about putting more of a pole building, not a Taj Mahal, expo center, for lack of a better name, here at the Dry Kingdom.
Events.
Not the event center, Paul. Not the event center.
That word doesn't.
And anyway, that's ROI. That I'm just thinking sport boats. You could have a sport boat show in there. You could have an RV show in there. It just fits. And if it's more of a pole building, not a big. Anyway, it's something that would be worth kind of a talk through.
I think we include in the budget an item to research the potential of doing that, because we want to make sure that if we do that, we're going to get the revenue we expect.
Right.
Yeah, we had a conversation with the regional solutions team, business oriented, and all those folks of that possibility. Because the idea came up with, again, the fact that the chamber every year put out this seafood and wine event that they have to pay over $150,000 just in pants. And you look at, putting something like that towards a loan, and talking to Business Oregon, first of all, they can provide planning funds for things like that, and they actually even sent me a form already. And even though that particular capital improvement is not on the list, we do have on the strategic plan ways of creating revenues. It does talk about finding other ways of creating revenues. So so we talked, and Sarah was at that meeting with the Regional Solutions, and we talked about if there's the opportunity out there, and Rose said they would use it. The chamber said they have other events they can use it for. They have the cider festival and other things that they could use. I believe we could do maybe some marquee shows, morning shows, and other musical events, whatever it is that could contribute to paying for that. So it is something we have to analyze and see where is the best spot. We do have some areas back there by behind Noah, the old buildings, that if we need to move the dry camp over there, and here's the best spot, we can probably. It is again something that plan would analyze, and then they would also analyze if it's feasible. Can we, by doing that, bring the business to fit into and pay the loan that we would get to something like that, for instance. So it's just a thought. I know the new board tried to put an event in, and it was very controversial. It is something we have to talk about and see how, because this is a recreational area right here. That's what this is for, and that's what that would be. It would attract more people to the RV park. It would attract more people to the marina. It would attract more people to Newport in general. It wouldn't be the type of people that would, they still would use the hotels. We wouldn't be competing with hotels. Again, that is part of the analysis they would have to do anyway. But think it's a possibility.
When we're finished, just might suggest it's 10:10, that we might want to take a 10-minute break.
That's what I was gonna say, and then kind of wrap it up.
Yeah.
If I might just add one real quick thing on this, April 13th, at 6 p.m., it's either 6 or 7.
Yes.
The city has a public hearing on, this is the planning commission, on zoning requirements that may change and building code requirements that may change inside the tsunami mitigation zone. This is directly related to what we're talking about here. Future development South Beach, I think that we would want to be very much involved in that. I can only say so much as a staff member, opinion-wise on it, but it's something to keep in mind because it's being talked about right now. So.
Yeah, and one thing real quick on that too, and the other possibility that we could do is there is something called the RUB building. It's a building a lot of ports use out there. It's kind of a temporary building, but it's very strong. You can do a lot of ports use for storage, and sometimes they keep them for 5-10 years, depending on their needs. But it is much stronger than a plant and won't be blowing out with the wind or things like that. That we could possibly, and you don't need to actually put the infrastructure. It just sits, it's strong enough to sit in place. It is something we can look at it too, and we can do that on the analysis and see temporarily for, I don't know, a year, 2 years, 3 years, if it is something that we make sense on the long run, that we can see if we get enough business to fit into it. If we do, it's like, okay, now we can go with more permanent structure. So it is just a thought that we need to research a little bit more. But as we do this possible planning, we can take that into consideration as well.
So we'll take a little 10-minute and then wrap it up.